Hello and welcome back. So as promised, in this lesson we're going to have a look at our expression player, and if you remember from the last session, it was one of our utility recipes that we added, and as far as we went, it simply closed the mouth on a character that was modelled with the jaw open. Okay, actually I'm sure you've had a play with this, but it does an awful lot more than that. As you can see, there's a lot of sliders to do all manner of different things to our character to alter their expression. So let's have a quick look through it. It's great on its own to play with, but until we actually start coding with it, it's nothing more than a toy, to be honest. So let's have a little look as we go down from the top. So the first one, enable blinking, does exactly what it says. If I just flick over to the scene and get a bit closer, what we should see is the character will now randomly blink. Again, this is controlled by this blink duration and the two delay values here. So have a play with those, fiddle around, but it just adds that little bit more realism. To add another layer, we can enable saccades, and all that saccades are, they're different eye movements that people naturally make. So once I switch this on, again what we should see is randomly, there you go, you can see the eyes just wander around just like a normal human being would. Again, there's some different values we can fiddle with here. Gaze target, gaze weight. To be honest, I've never played with those, so feel free to experiment. I have messed with this gaze mode where he will look around differently depending on what action you define in here, but again, that's something for you to play with. Enjoy. So that's the eye stuff, and personally I think it's great just to switch them on anyway, just to make your character a little bit more lifelike. However, the rest of the face at the moment is still a little bit static, and we're going to have a look at writing some code to alter that. The next area are these 4 overrides. Now, like I said in the last lesson, most of these things, the mouth, up, down, let's have a look at something, see the cheek, these are specifically something to do with UMA, so they're not something that you would find in Mechanim. However, the expression player can override Mechanim animations. So for example, by default the eyes and the jaw, which are controlled by Mechanim, are now being overridden by the expression player. We can also override things like the neck and the head. So for example, the neck slider at the moment, up down, does nothing because Mechanim has control of it. But if we switch this on, we can take control with the expression player. So that's up to you. You can use it for a look system if you're not using IK, or maybe just to add some nods during conversation. But I tend to leave those off, to be honest, and let Mechanim take charge, or let IK take charge. But the rest of it, if you have a play with it, there's lots of toys to see. Head tilt doesn't work there because I've not got this overridden. But things like mouth left, right, upper lips, we can change things. So look, there's a bit of Elvis action going on there. Fabulous. Yeah, you can play to your heart's content and make some nice weird expressions. Again, great fun to play with. However, it's not doing an awful lot for us in game until we learn how to code with it. So that's what I'd like to do next. So let's just stop this and create ourselves a new script. So I'm going to create a C# script called mood. Lovely, and let's open that up and fiddle with it. So the first things we need to have our using statements in here. So I'm going to start by using UMA and using our UMA character system, just like before. The new one that we're going to add in here is using UMA.poseTools. Now this is what gives us access to the expression player. Let's just get rid of this for now and start defining some variables. So we need to reference our components. So let's have a private dynamic character avatar, and we'll call that avatar, just like in our other scripts. We will also have this time a private expression player, and we'll call this expression. Okay, and one last thing I want in here is to have a private bool. I'm going to use this as a flag to show that everything is actually hooked up. So I'm not going to try and change expressions till I know the expression player is hooked up to my UMA and it's working. So we'll call this connected. Okay, that's something I'm going to set. Now you can use all sorts of different methods of interfacing or controlling these things. I'm going to do something in the inspector. You might want to do something that's actually on the screen. But this is just to give you a brief example. So I'm going to do a few variables here. Let's have a public enum called mood and list our moods that we want. So I'm going to say neutral, happy, and let's say sad. That's as good a start as any. So let's actually create our enum here. So public mood, and I'm going to call this mood, and we'll set this to mood.neutral. Yeah, great. So that's our starting point. Just because of the way this is going to work, I'm going to create a private mood as well. I'm going to call this last mood, and yeah, let's set that as mood neutral as well. Okay, that's good. That's our variable setup. So the first ones are the important ones. It's just to do with how I want this to work. Don't necessarily feel you have to type this in. I'm going to give you a much more complete script at the end, but this is just to show you what you need to be aware of to connect up. So far, really, the new things are this pose tools, namespace, and this expression player that we're going to get a reference to. Just like before, we're going to use the event system to actually flag to this script that our character has been created. So I'm going to type in some on-enable and on-disable code here. Pow, that was quick. So as you can see, just like before, I've added a listener to our avatar's character created. So I only want this to happen once when the character is initially created, and I'm going to call a method called onCreated. This is obviously an error state because I haven't actually written it yet. The other thing that's bugging me there, let's just correct my spelling of neutral. There we go. Thank you. So now we've got that. One thing I'm going to do in unenable as well, I'm going to grab a reference to our avatar. So let's say avatar equals get component. That's going to be the dynamic character avatar. Okay, so it's going to grab that reference first before it starts trying to do anything with it. So let's add this onCreated method down here. Pow, there we go. So just something I want you to pay attention to is that our onCreated needs to take in the UMA data that gets sent by this character created event. Again, we're not really going to use it, but we need to actually accept that data. So in here we're actually going to start setting up our expression player. So first of all, once the character has been created, it should have launched that additional recipe. So our expression player, we should be able to get that component now. So we'll get component expression player. So we've now got a reference to it. We can now start talking to it and setting a few things up. So first thing, I'm going to make sure as soon as the character is created, I'm going to say expression, and I'm going to say enable blinking equals true. So that's just like ticking the box to turn the blinks on. Again, we had the saccades as well. So I'm going to say expression dot enable, and you can see there, enable saccades. And we're going to say that's true. So all of those things that we saw in our inspector are freely available to play around with in our code as well. So it's really, really easy to use. What I'm also going to say is once this is all working, once we've got that component, we should be able to say everything's connected. So the next piece of code will actually fire. Okay, so that's our startup. Let's just save that and just prove that this works. Oh, something wrong there. Let's have a look. 1414. Oh yes, I have an enum that's exactly the same name as the actual class. Bad boy. Let's call this moods instead. A schoolboy type error. Dear oh dear. Like I say, it's a good job you're not following along with me here. There we go. Let's compile that. That should go away. Lovely. Right. So if we attach this to our character, let's just pop the mood script on there. You can see we get our enum that we can play with. It doesn't do anything at the moment, but let's just press play, and what should happen, as you can see, our expression player is attached and the blinking and saccades have been activated. So let's actually get some sort of expression onto this character. So let's open an update method. So void update, and let's do an if, and we're going to check connected. So if connected and last mood is different to our current mood, so this is going to check whether the operator, or whether the variable in the inspector has been changed. So if that is the case, then we'll go ahead and do something. So the first thing, we will set last mood to equal mood. So that makes sure that this only fires once. I'm going to use a switch statement here just to select between them. So I'm going to say switch on our mood, and in our switch statement let's have some cases. So case, and let's say if it is moods dot, let's start with neutral. Again, let's put break in there. Good. Let's have a, oh dear, oh dear, that should not be a semicolon, that should be a colon, shouldn't it? Again, don't worry about this, you don't have to use case statements if you're not used to them, but I just thought it's a nice way to play with it. So let's have, if somebody switched it to mood.happy, or moods.happy, then let's put a break in there. And finally, let's say case moods dot sad, and again break, and I'll probably get told off if I don't do this, so let's put in a default case, and again just a break. So that set our structure up. So now we can actually start putting some facial movements into these different modes that we've set up. So let's have a little look at happy. So in here, let's just make some room. Yep, and let's talk to the expression player. So let's say expression, and I'm going to say left mouth. There we go. You can see I found left mouth smile frown. I'm going to say that equals 0.7f. So that's just moving the slider to 0.7. Let's do some more. So expression, expression dot right. Let's do the opposite. Mouth smile frown equals 0.7. So that should turn the corners of the mouth up. Let's have expression. What shall we do? Let's say left eye open close, and we will say, let's just squint the eyes a little. So I'm going to say minus 0.3. Again, you can read these values from the inspector, so you can set it all up, record these values and fiddle about with them, bring them into here. So right eye open close, and again we'll say minus 0.3f, and let's just move the brows a tiny little bit. So let's say expression, let's just move the mid brow up down, and let's just shift it up, let's say 0.4. Again, I'm just plucking these out of my head here. So that should give us a happy expression. So let's just press play. And what we should find when it runs, again, everything's there. And let's change our mood to happy. And you can see those have taken effect. Again, saccades and blinks are running. So it's very easy, as you can see, just using these to fiddle about and alter expressions. Let's just copy that into here and change them. Again, let's flip these over, change the positives to negatives, negatives to positives, and that should give us a sad expression. Neutral, happy, sad. Yeah, that's not too bad. Again, obviously for this to work properly, I'd need to put some of these into the neutral area here, and we'd have to change these to zeros just to make sure it actually zeroes out. Okay, let's just do that just to prove the point. That's great. Let's run. So now the neutral, if I go happy, neutral should cancel that back out. There you go. So I now have a selector where I can change the mood of my character. Now, of course, I've done something really simple here, just to show you how straightforward it is to use these few things to interact. Obviously, you want to do something a little bit more sophisticated. Rather than make you type out lots and lots of adjustments, I have provided you with a script. So everything I've just shown you here is implemented in that script, which does something just a little bit fancier. So again, just before we move away from this, the important things, we're actually connecting or using this Pose Tools namespace, making sure we grab hold of that expression player, but I made sure I did that when the character was created by subscribing to that onCreated method. So collect the expression player, added blinking, added different expressions, really very easy to interact with. If I just take off this mood script, I do have one I prepared earlier. Here we are, Uma Mood Slider. I've changed it ever so slightly. It does exactly the same thing, but this time I have an integer slider to change moods. The reason for that is the enum drop down pauses the game, which looks awful. It kind of ruins the effect. But if I, again, let's just open this up and have a brief look at what I've done here that's slightly different. As you can see, I've put a lot more time into setting up different areas of the face or different parts of the expression player for all these different cases that we're in. And I've also just got this running constantly. So every frame or every time it updates, it's making sure that it puts the expressions in these positions. The upshot of that is when I actually run, one of the things that you should notice, if I just zoom in a little bit, is when he blinks, we should find that it's a little bit smoother. Can you see how we've got a delay? It's not just binary on and off. That's because every frame I'm actually lerping to those positions. So if we inspect now, using lerps in there, I can now move to my happy expression. You can see I've got a nice smooth animation to that. Sad expression, oh dear. Angry, is that? Oh, I don't know. That's means something, that one. And surprised, of course. And again, because these are being updated constantly, the blinks and the saccades are working over the top of these expressions. So that is just giving you a little taste of the power of the expression player. When you actually couple this with some of the plugins on the asset store, such as Lip Sync Pro, for example, you can very easily get some quite convincing lip sync going on with your Uma. It's directly connected, so it does work with the expression player, and it's beautiful, to be honest. So that's worth having a little look at. But even if you don't use something like lip sync, there's an awful lot of fun that you can have just adding that little bit of expression to your characters. So hopefully you will find that useful. Have fun, and I will see you next time. And once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to my patrons for making this possible. If you would like to support me, feel free to click that link at the end of the video. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.